Hey everybody, welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, and Disembodied Tan, Squinty, Disembodied Beard John, and all of you. Hello, we're back! Happy Monday edition. Polly, thank you for the resub. 20 months, you're almost to a double sub anniversary. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. Good, good, good. Oh, it's warm. It's warm for you, Kodiak. That's where it is here now. It's supposed to be 62 today. It was lovely in Arizona. 80s and sunny on the day my mom and I went to the art show. So, refresh again, Twisted Oma. You probably can't. I shouldn't just say that because, you probably can't see me. If you can't see me, then I can't really tell you to refresh again. No! I want my warmth. I was so happy about the 80 degree. Now, of course, 80 in Arizona is a lot nicer than 80 here with our high humidity. But I would be happy with 70. Ooh, 70s would be nice. But yeah. All right. Let's see here. Boop. I just got my box from Reaper. I ordered new minis for us to paint. I ordered. Because they've started doing some old Verners in Bones USA and stuff, I ordered a couple. I did order the mini, the 90-day mini, and got my copy. I ordered some other cool, fun things too. Actually, I ordered quite a bit. Quite a bit of things. I did get my green stuff. Yay, yay. Let's see here. What else did I get? Random stuff. Random crap. And some paint. Oh yeah, I can't wait for this one. The kitty catfolk bard from Julie. Cannot wait for that one. That'll be fun. It's a really good catfolk. And then I did get the halfling dog rider, the female one, because I liked her. Let's see here. What else did I get? I actually got a couple of halflings because we haven't painted very many of them. I liked the halfling cleric and bard, so I picked them up. Oh, not yours? You have the credit on that, catfolk. I thought. Oh, no, it is. Yeah, I was wrong. Not a Julie, a Glenn. Well, he's pretty cool. He looks like he needs to be a tiger, though. He's pretty thick. He's built. He's a little bit too built for a bard. Unless he's a bard that works out. Let's see. Is that everybody? Oh yeah, I did get the tree mimic. Yep. What am I missing? I got the plague doctor, because I thought that could be fun. And then I got another Verner, Elastria, which is one of the classic Verners that everybody in the world painted when it came out. But I haven't painted it. I think I painted it once. I haven't painted it for a very, very long time. She's a nice, simple model, so I thought she'd be a good one for us. And I just got some stuff. And there is a sample, a paint sample. I should look at it and see. Well, I should put my green stuff in the freezer, too. David was joking that after our fridge died and had to be resuscitated, like for the first little bit of time, there was more green stuff in the freezer than anything else. Yes. Yep, so get my green stuff over here so I remember to put it in the thing. I put on hand lotion, so I'm trying really hard not to rub my eyes, even though they're itchy, because, allergies. Allergy pill, Quindy. But yeah, I had to get more rich leather and tropical blue. Let's see, this looks like a black indigo sample, actually, or a Death Knight black sample. But we'll find out. Let's find out what it is. Usually I can guess what color they were trying to make when they oopsed it, just by looking at it, because I have done enough oopses in my life. Also, you'll be pleased to know, Quindy, that I finished all of my recommendations for Reaper as far as paint cancellations while I was in Arizona. I actually busted down on Friday and Saturday because I felt like doing it. And I recommended keeping moth green. So you should be, if they can throw it out, they cannot do it. No, it looks to be a simple sample. Like I said, usually I can tell. So what we'll do is we're going to put this into actually it could be a Nightmare or a Void Blue. Yeah, because I just looked at it, and when you see this kind of intense blue, I'm going to just show you guys how to do this for yourself, because that's the way we roll here, right? We teach you how to fish. 1 second. Let me get in focus. So you see that intense blue flush when I open the bottle without even squeezing anything out? When you see that really intense blue, that usually means you're dealing with something in a blue base, which usually means you're dealing with something that was essentially a dark blue or blue-black. Yeah, seeing this is a blue base, so it's not Death Knight. Yeah, it looks like Nightmare. Nightmare or an overdone, but remember, if it is that color, then it's probably not a sample. Usually what we do is, I'm just going to put a couple drops in here. What happens with samples is we don't make samples to order. We are working on a different formula, and we oops it, and it's more efficient to just put it out as samples than to try again and again loading pigment into it to correct it. This is not black enough to be Nightmare, though it's very close. But see how intensely blue that is? When you see that flush of intense blue, you are dealing with a blue base. It doesn't have, Nightmare's a little different, I think. Let's compare. Maybe they did just, no, actually, I think, let's see. Well, then if you want it, you have to do an order, like now, and hope they didn't run out. That's the problem, right? I get this order, but I ordered it a few days before we're going to put Nightmare Black next to it and see what it looks like. I would think the only two colors this is close to are Void Blue and Nightmare. It's got a transparency to it that Nightmare doesn't typically have. Because remember, there's more to a color than just color. There's usually when people are trying to describe a paint, there are three things they take into account. And with Master Series, one of those things is a moot point. So one of the things they take into account is finish. And then the next thing they take into account would be the actual color. And the third thing you take into account is transparency. This is why you can have a Pugh red and a Naphthol red, and despite looking like exactly the same color, they're different colors. Because the Pugh is very opaque, and the Naphthol is not as so. This is very close. Nightmare definitely has higher coverage, see it? And it also is more black. But they're very close. I would say maybe this was a Void Blue that got too much black in it. Because once you put too much black into a thing, that's where it's really hard to come out of. Like, you really can't go back on black except in very limited circumstances. And the only time you really can go back on black is if you're dealing with a color that has pigment interactions with it. So, for example, if you put too much black into an olive green, that's easy to correct because you can just load more yellow in. Because olive green itself is made through a synergy of yellow and black. So if your black gets too heavy, you can just increase the yellow. But in most cases, you can't do that. There's no good way to cancel out. But you see how that's more gray here, and this is more vibrant blue. So my guess is a Void Blue that got too black. Or maybe they just threw random colors together and decided they want to do a blue. Sometimes when you are out of samples and you don't have any oopses, you do actually just mix a random thing up to be a sample. Hi, Scanian. Wow, 5 hours. That's a long walk. And I got more brushes. See, I ordered a whole bunch of things before I left, so now I like have more brushes of my favorite kind. Which means it's probably almost time to retire my old Da Vinci that was getting really skinny. But I don't know. Maybe we'll work with old Da Vinci today. You can kind of see how this one is so skinny. See the difference? This is how my brushes wear. They just get thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner. And when they get to a certain point of thinness, they're really not useful for anything else other than doing extremely fine, thinned detail. Because they're just too skinny to carry much pigment, and they don't have the resiliency of a fresh brush. So I'm going to get out. Yeah, we'll get out another one. Hold on. Maybe I have a fresh one here that I hadn't used. I'm going to put the rest of them into this bag. Handy holding bag for all my fresh brushes. Get in there. Get in there. There we go. Now I've got a backstock. I can stop being nervous. There. Yay. Sweet. I also have this one Raphael that's been languishing in the drawer here. A short option. Ah. Sometimes they be like that. Alright, well let's get this Mousling done. I have to do the little metal gauntlet. Let's do that first. And then we can do, I think the only other thing we really have to do is the hilt of her sword. And then, yeah, basing on these guys. I'm not going to do a big display base for these guys, I don't think. I want them to be... I haven't decided, but it's like... I mean, I could put them together on one of the long bases that I ordered. Long bases are long. They probably could both fit on that. I don't know. I guess we could do a simple base. I hate to like keep them separate because I know with the way that Reaper goes, they'd get separated and then they'd lose one of them, you know, or they wouldn't be able to find one. And I guess putting them on a combined base would keep them together. We'll just have to see. I don't have a lot of oomph for the idea, so it would be a very simple rocky base, I think, if I did it. Also, their own integral bases aren't very... They're just like flagstones, dungeon generic flagstone base. But we'll think about it. We'll think about it. It would be kind of cool to put the ghosty up a little higher than her because it seems like she's like kind of looking up at him. So it'd be kind of cool to have them like this, which would involve building up part of this, using cork probably, and making the base a little bit bigger. But we'll see. We'll see. All right, so let's get some gray mixed up. Oh, very, very cool. Where'd he go? Yes. For sure. That's really cool, though, Kuro. That's huge progress. Let me grab my cloudy gray. So... I'll keep my sample around, I guess. It's a dark blue. I should actually put a little drip of it into the top of the bottle so I can remember what it is. Put the drip on, and then actually smear it and thin it a little bit, because that's gonna show me better, because it's so dark. So that'll tell me what it is. Morning tonic. But yeah, that's really excellent, Kuro, that you've gotten to that point. Neato Fritos. So is this a fresh new Da Vinci? We'll find out. It looks like one. It looks pretty fat. I may have used it before, but let's put water in it and find out. Oh yes, yes, much fatter. See the difference? Fresh, not fresh. Fresh, months of labor. But like I said, if I ever need to do super, super micro detail, this is the kind of brush I want to do that detail. So I won't throw it out. It'll just hang out. Because whenever I need to do really, really fine stuff, that's a good option. But yeah, doing the line redesign for Ron was fun and interesting. I did not hold back, so if Reaper adopts my suggestions, it will be quite a dramatic change. But I think you will all find that most of the colors that like we think of as standard colors would remain. So I'm going to grab my cloudy gray. I'm going to get that out, 4 drops of it. I'm going to use it to make a highlight and shadow because I only need to do this tiny gauntlet, so I don't need very much of anything. Need to grab my little bit of blue. Oh, I missed a scanning question. So skeleton white is a weird one, or skeleton bone is a weird one, Scannion, if you're still there. It's greenish. It's almost like a grayish green. It feels like a warmer color. One second, I do have it in my bailiwick here. Yeah, here it is. So when you look at it, say let's look at it next to something that's very warm, like Assyrian sand. So if you look at something like there, you can see the grayness in it, right? But then, if you grab a true light gray, or even a gray bone, like polished bone here, another one of my favorite bone colors, you can see that it is a bit warmer and a little lighter than the polished bone. But you can see that they both are still grayish, right? So the warm effect is the yellow that's in there and the green tone. The yellow and the black are mostly interacting to give you the green with skeleton bone, but I believe it does have a tiny, tiny smidgen of green pigment in it because the swatch was, I was looking to go that kind of almost magical thing. Are you still here, Scannion? Hopefully you still are. But yeah, so the best way to find out is to put them next to each other and look. But skeleton, I would say, it's a good utility bone if you need something lighter. I would consider it a highlight color for, because it is quite pale, as you can see. But it does have that weird greenish tone to it. I always thought magical skeletons or animated skeletons might have a little bit of a different color. And so I went that way with the skeleton bone. But you know what? You wouldn't even notice the greenish tone normally. You have to put it next to something that shows it. Good deal. Yeah, I like skeleton bone because it's unusual. I like unusual colors. Especially unusual off highlight colors because I think they've got a lot of potential. Morning, Daffodwear. Yeah, at this point I'm betting Kuro knows her limitations pretty well. They should make a TV show out of you, Kuro. Like a special showing the power of human resilience. Because this is impressive what you've managed to do in the couple years since you emerged from what happened to you. All right, I'm just going to put a tiny bit of carbon scoring blue into my gray so it's not so flat. Then I'm going to add some water and make some mixes. And I don't need really high coverage mixes because I've already put a base coat on the model here. So mostly I'm mixing up my mid-tone for corrections and to mix shadows and highlights. So I'm going to throw some white in here. Let's grab this in. Come on, little thing. Get over here. It doesn't want to move. There we go. Oh man. I mean, things are gonna tend to flake off of it. It's plasticky. Definitely prime it. Definitely not ideal. But it's gonna be, I would not leave hot glue anywhere that it like would be handled, but you say it's on base, so it should be fine. Because I think it's very, very prone to rub off. Paint doesn't stick to it very well. It's not a material that that's really easy to have paint stick to. I'm going to mix up some pure white for my highlights. We don't need to do many different colors for these gauntlets because they're so small. So mostly we're just going to be doing a little spot. I mean, if you put a paper mache layer over it, then obviously, yeah, but you're going to lose that smoothness. So it depends on, like, if you're using it for something like a swamp, right, where you want kind of ooze, then obviously you don't want to do the paper mache. But yeah, anything other than the hot glue is probably going to take paint better. Obviously, putting like paper mache is gonna, but that's going to absorb paint, right? So at least for the first couple coats. So, I mean, don't overthink it unless you're trying to really, like, if you think it's going to get a lot of wear. Yeah. So, if it's in an area that's going to get touched a lot, then I would put something over the top. Thicker primer won't necessarily help if the hot glue you're using is really just kind of going to repel it. I would probably just use some sort of putty to like a wood putty to go and use it. I used wood putty as filler when I was doing terrain. Much better, in my opinion, than hot glue if you want to paint over, because it's just like any other like putty in epoxy or whatever. Once it dries, you can paint over it. Even I would probably at this point even use texture paste, anything like that. But the texture paste is going to be a lot like wood filler putty. But anything like that is a much better filler than the hot glue. Also will adhere and generally dry harder and be harder to pop off. Yeah, I don't know how they get caught on fire. I mean, the problem is it's a very cheap electronic device, right? So, and you've just got real cheap plastic components with a heating component. So if you think about it, that's, kind of a recipe for disaster. But then again, you also have to think about the vast number of people who like use them and have no problem. And usually what the thing is you just want to put it down, make sure, keep an eye on it while it heats up, and then use it right away and then unplug it. And I think those people who are like this caught on fire are the people who just left it sitting there for forever. Oh yeah, there could be a faulty element, for sure. Yeah, you could do that. You could texture over the glue layer, or like I said, I would just use a putty for that, but that's whatever you want to use. It's just that the glue itself is not going to look great, and it's going to not take paint quite as well. So yeah, whatever solution you arrive at is just fine. Need my gray liner. Where's my gray liner? But yeah, so if Ron takes my recommendations on paint cancellation, what you will see is a lot of early cancellations from Coreline. Because, flat out, the bones, oranges and yellows especially, are superior. There we go, some gray liner. Which means that at first glance, people will freak out because it's a substantial rework of the entire paint line, like all of it, bones and MSP core. Ron even said wow when he saw it. But like I said, Reaper could totally ignore my recommendations and do something on their own. Or they could use what I give them as a beginning and decide that they're going to say, oh, but we don't think we're going to keep this one. They could choose to cancel colors that I didn't recommend cancel. And that's fine. And so I told Ron he could do whatever he wanted with it. I had the time, because usually at my parents' house, we do little outings, but like I have a lot of time to just sit back and relax. And that kind of subject, like that kind of task, the whole sorting through, assessing each color, you know, deciding, you know, grouping colors together, and all that is like totally in my skill set. Like it's arguably like I'm the best person for the job kind of thing. Not even because I created the paint line, but just the way my brain works. A base on a mini, I think, Pendrake. Well, that's what I did, is I essentially ripped everything apart and classed all the reds and say, okay, how do I create a new line out of these reds? Like if I had to create a new paint line, and, you know, obviously I can't keep them all. You will notice that there have been some cuts in stuff like we had a lot of different dark reds and they weren't very different from each other. So I essentially chose the ones I felt were the most functional and got rid of everything else. But I kept a lot of the medium reds because the medium reds actually do have some fundamental differences. Even though they seem close, there are differences in pigment. And people tend to also like having a choice of like more vibrant reds. Like they don't want to have just one red. Reds are very popular. So some colors in the line that are much later, actually I recommended keeping. Yes, I did recommend keeping rich indigo, but we'll see. Like I said, Reaper can throw it out. Yes, I did recommend both of those. I put a indigo, because we have a teal section. It makes sense to keep an indigo section as well. The indigos aren't as popular with some people, but I love them, and I know I use them a lot. You know, I've used Night Sky indigo so much in my own painting, including like mostly for Halfling Assassin. She's probably the more well-known model that I did with Night Sky. Yeah, don't underestimate Night Sky. Even though it is a muted indigo, you can use it to highlight black. And that's what I did with the Halfling Assassin, and it was really a good call. So if you haven't given Night Sky a look, you should. Well then, I mean, the best I can hope is that when they do decide to do the cancels, they'll let people know, like, that's the thing. But because a lot of the colors, I don't know, I recommended cuts all over the place. I have my sheets, but I'm not going to share them with you guys because it might not be real. I'm just lining with my gray liner, by the way, to make this little gauntlet stand out. It's time to get close. Little gauntlet. Little paw gauntlet. So cute, everybody. And there's, I think, chain beyond that. There's a muff. There's a muff. And there's just chain beyond that, so. But it's plain that she does have a gauntlet on that hand, so. Yeah, I really like Night Sky. But what I did is I essentially chose based almost entirely on utility. I don't consider popularity like sales numbers. Like I considered it, but I also, because I had to trim substantially, I was pretty aggressive in looking at when, like, because Bones and, like, for example, Fireball, or Sunrise Orange is really close to Fireball, and it's really close to Lava, and it's really close to Fire Orange. And so I had to essentially look at those and say, which one is the most utilitarian and works the best and has the best coverage of all of the oranges, right? And maybe Fire Orange sells a little better, but only because it's on the basic MSP rack, right? So in that case, I'm still going to put Fire Orange aside and say Sunrise is a better color. Well, I am giving you a warning right now, Crows. Like, and I'm warning you guys big time because there is a lot of cuts. Like, a lot of cuts. I've said this before. If you have a favorite color, you should get it. Otherwise, last time they gave you a little bit, I believe when they... I mean, I remember when Ed canceled HD, you did have time to order. But again, how much time relatively you have to order is not necessarily going to be controllable, because if they cancel a color and it only has 8 bottles left in its bin, they're not going to make a new bin of it, not of a canceled color. So it's less the time frame that they give you, and more dependent on how much that paint actually has left in its bin at the time that the cut is announced. So even with the most notice ever, you may not be able to get a color in time, even if you ordered right away. And that's just the way it is. But you also just heard me say that the cuts I made were usually colors that were really close to another color, or alternatively, colors that could be easily mixed just by adding white, for example. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about, 330-ish colors in core, plus over 100 or around 100. So you have 400 and, like, say, 20 colors, and I had cut that down to 240. It was actually easier than you'd think. Yeah, it just isn't practical for Reaper, sadly, Hyper. The paint line got just so bloated, and the problem is, and this actually does affect you and other gamers, the line is so bloated no game store wants to order it. It, like, because it's so big, it's not something that a game store can just order and find a floor spot for, because it takes up too much room. And there's too much of it, and it's also too expensive. So if you think of it that way, much as you might like it to stay the same, to help the line and to help Reaper, it needed a cancel. It badly needed a cancellation. I mean, I was with you guys, like, and I pretty much kept it from having cancellations for a long time. A very long time. But with some distance and time and perspective, I presented this plan to Ron even before I left. I said that if I had to change it, if I had to make cuts, I'd combine the lines and resort them, right? And cut the colors that were too close to each other across the two lines. And keep the colors that were most useful or easiest to mix those other colors from. So yeah, sure, changes, it can be bad, but I am a believer in change, I'm afraid. And especially if it's going to help the company, which I think it will, and I think it'll enable game stores to actually afford Master Series. Like, you have no idea how sad I was when my longtime game store in Madison just told me they wouldn't even order Master Series or keep it in the store because it was too big, too expensive. They didn't have the room, and they already had 5 other paint lines, right? Oh, yeah. That's fair, Korniko. Right, exactly. They have to just guess which colors are going to be popular. So making the line more concise. And like I said, the stuff that I recommended to cancel was stuff that was just like weird outliers or very close to other colors. And where I had a choice that was really, really similar, and I just had to make the call, then I would look at, like, popularity. Because, like, I hear people say over and over again that they really like Troll Flesh from the Dungeon Dwellers line, those boxes. So it's later in the Bones line. It's really close to Muddy Olive, but I think that Troll Flesh is better. And so I recommended Killing, which I think now is Muddy Green, actually, Muddy Olive. Which is one of the earliest colors. It was one of the first colors we ever released. But I feel like Troll Flesh is more popular, and it's almost exactly the same. So, what I'm trying to tell you is that if they follow the changes I recommended, yes, there will be huge changes as far as a lot of colors will go away. But the colors that go away are going to have colors that you easily can shift to that are almost identical. Yeah, people seem to like Troll Flesh better than the Muddy Olive color that I originally made. And that's fair. Like, if you think about it, I've said more than once that the Bones line was more the pinnacle of my paint creation career. Because when I just started, the start of Master Series was when I was just starting out. And I learned a lot over time. So we're adding some lighter gray highlights here to pop out that little gauntlet. Right, and that's the problem, right? Because they don't all fit on a rack. That is part of the problem, Hyper. Because they don't all fit on a rack, and then the colors that aren't on the rack, like all the Kickstarter colors, some of which we love, those colors never get sold, and then they get targeted with the cancel bat, right? I did not. That was not part of my job, Kuro. I think it's both, Pendrake. What I find is that if you give something the wrong name, it can inhibit sales more than giving it a good name is going to make it sell. Bring back Imperial Shadow. But you can mix it so easily, Moonlight. Just use either Sapphire Blue or Dragon Blue and mix it with Walnut Brown. And you've got it. That's how Corporea always made it. But yeah, my job was not to recommend bringing back cancel colors. My job was to take the two lines and combine them into one with a 240 color footprint. And that was exactly what I did. Walnut brown, yep. It's she uses walnut brown because of the ton of black in it, but adding the blue cools it out and gives you that blue tone. I think she originally used Sapphire. Sapphire and Dragon are very, very close. I think I kept both because Dragon was slightly lighter in my recommends, and because they're both popular colors. So there are points where I'm like, yeah, you can see both of these. So pure white, just to punch up the little paw on the gauntlet. Sapphire blue, yeah. 9016. There we go. There's our little gauntlet. Yay! Technically your little thumb is through there, but it's in shadow, so I'm not going to highlight it. And you don't need to be, like, too precise on the gauntlet. It's so tiny that you can really just do spot highlights and you're going to be okay for the NMM. Cool, Corvus. Greetings. Welcome to our paint. Yeah, Rhonda did those Learn to Paint kits. She does a stream too on our channel here. Not every day like I do, but oh, is it Tuesdays, Quindy? Remind me. She's not always on, but she did a really good job on the Learn to Paint kits. There we go. I think I like that. Monday. Oh, it's today. Okay. Oh, super. Thanks, Moonlight. Yeah, I was just going to check that later. Perfect timing. I can't wait to see the minis. Because I'm still going to finish this one for ReaperCon. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, I don't know if she's like going to be quite competition worthy, because I can't do any like real fine detail or freehand on her. So that's part of why I ordered the Belle model. Because bigger, and I have room, and there's a fancy dress. But yeah, Corvus, I'm the one who made the paint line originally. We were just talking about the fact that Reaper's probably going to downsize the line a bit. And I had the opportunity to give input over the weekend. So I was talking to the Reaper fam here about it, because they're all passionate paint users. All right, let's do the base coat on this hilt. That's pretty much the last bit we have to do on little Miss Mouse. She's looking good. You ran out of epoxy sculpt. Oh no! Oh, okay, that's fine. That's alright. I have stuff. I have Milliput. I have green stuff. I'll just have to put a little bit more prep into it. Sometimes that's good, though, because Moonlight, honestly, I like it when I have to have time doing prep, because I use that time to think about colors. Colors, freehand designs, all that stuff. I always find prep work kind of relaxing, and it helps get me into the right frame of mind to really start the model. Yeah, of all people you would mail minis to, right? Oh, are you UK? Cool. Yeah. Yeah, Jimmy's awesome. Yeah, it's a different beast. I always preferred paints that I essentially started out using Vallejo and all that and Games Workshop, and my problem was often that I had to thin the paint so much that I just had to spend a lot of time adding water into the paint to get it the place I wanted. Corvus, and so the Master Series line was really based around me giving you a paint that works fine out of the bottle, but that it is fluid enough that you don't have to thin it like crazy to get it to where you need it. So remember, it's going to be more fluid and not require as much thinning as you may be used to on the palette. So I work with a well a lot. That's my main palette. I can do wet palette. I just don't like it very much. I'm capable of wet paletting, but it's not my preferred mode. Yeah, exactly. You can't go wrong with a fancy dress. All right, I'm going to put just one drop of water into this rich leather. Hey, Roger. So we're using rich leather for our base for our gold, as I often do. Other acceptable alternatives that I've used numerous times, I just don't have them right in front of me, would be NMM Gold Shadow, 9301, or Uniform Brown. Actually, I used to use, before rich leather, I used Uniform Brown all the time to base coat gold NMM. 9127. It's also a great base color for NMM Bronze. I would still actually prefer using it for that. It's too darn cold all over. I just came back from Arizona, Corvus, in the desert, where it was nice and warm. And it just made me wish that it was firmly spring where I am. So we'll get this base on here. It's because Texas is weird. We're supposed to get a little warmer the next couple days, but then we're supposed to drop down in the 50s again, which annoys me. I was having so much fun, like being outside without a coat in Arizona. The lovely 75 to 80 degrees. Hanging out in the sun on my parents' patio. I love their house in Arizona, but dang, I always joked that I wanted to buy it, that they shouldn't sell it until I could afford to buy it, but what would I do with a house in Arizona? I'd visit it twice a year and then it would just sit there. I'll still be sad when they decide they're done moving back and forth, though. So they'd spend the winter there. Mom doesn't think. She's like, I don't want to be doing this when I'm 80, so I probably only have a few more years. Hey, Crowley. Oh, early meetings. That sucks. Well, thank you for hanging out, Crowley. Yes. Yeah, because the next lessons after the basics will be layering. Rhonda does really good explanations, and she'll also, I need to pretty much, like, step by step how much to thin each paint, which is nice. Yeah, we've got a lot of trees blooming here. Well, that's what the groundhog says, remember, guys. Yes, exactly. You give up control of viscosity when in exchange for longevity. Yep. And I agree, Moonlight. I very much agree. And I never liked that exchange because I want to control my viscosity. Absolutely. I will always choose that trade, even in the driest climate where my paint wants to dry much faster. But, I mean, I'm in a very humid climate, relatively speaking. And in Texas, I was in a humid climate. Usually it was between 40 and 60% in Texas. So, where I was anyway. So I'm used to having a little bit more humidity. But, I mean, I used the well palette when I was painting in Santa Fe, and that humidity, they're high deserts, so it's very low humidity. It just meant bigger paint puddles. Hey, Richard. That's what I hated about Texas, Pendrake, was that where it would get really, really warm in the spring and then it would drop and the trees would die because they would have started to, like, you know, come out of hibernation. Especially that killed my poor little bonsai. Like, they died from the last one before I moved, which is fine because I wouldn't have been able to move them anyway. There we go. So we had a nice solid base coat. We did 2 coats. The wet palette is useful when you want to be really spontaneous in your mixing. Like, I don't find it all that much more useful for wet blending. But when, like, I can see why David uses nothing but a wet palette. And to block in things quickly, doing quick spot mixes, where you don't need a ton of palette space then, you can just use your paper, makes a lot of sense. Alright, so now let's get our shadow figured out. I'm going to grab just a bit of brown liner. I think today is what I'm feeling. Just got to find it. Got it buried behind my walnut brown, or it's over here. There it is. Yeah, that's what our stuff's going down to. Yep. Not when you're, like, driving for days, Pendrake. I mean, I guess you could, but the problem is cushioning them in the box so that they don't get knocked around. And I didn't have room in my car to transport them for sure, so I would have had to pack them for the movers to move, and that's just asking for broken pots and crazy stuff. There was just no practical way to do it. Oh yeah, for sure, Corvus. I do the same thing with my well, but I just use a saran wrap over the top. Put an extra drop of water in all my paints and put a cling wrap. Rhonda uses a damp sponge. She just has a big sponge that she just gets damp, and then she puts that right on top of her well palette. It keeps the paint just fine. And so every palette has tricks to doing that. Oh, Kiki never punishes Mommy. She was so happy. She was squeaking. She was so happy. And Kiki doesn't squeak. She was like letting out little happy squeaks. And I got fall over dog 4 or 5 times. Fall over dog is when she's so excited she goes in circles so fast she falls over. And then she gets belly rubs. Yes, Squeaky Kiki was very cute. Yeah, that is a downside. Then I would go to a well. Given those choices, I would do wet palette for sure, Corvus. The only reason Because if you're using a dry tile, you've essentially got maximum surface area, so your paint's just going to disappear. Using a palette like this, you can see these are much smaller wells, like my finger just barely fits in one. So these are a very, very small well, but they're deep. So what that lets me do is take between 4 and 6 or 4 and 8 drops of paint or paint and water mix. Usually I get to about 6 to 8 drops when I add water to make a fairly deep paint puddle. And so you have minimal surface area and you've got fluid in the depth. And so it essentially evaporates much slower. And this is also a porcelain palette, which means it's very easy to clean. That's why I went to them in the first place, is that I loved how easy they were to clean. The old plastic and metal palettes are just like, paint will dry on them. There's just nothing you can do. The more you scrub them, the more the paint will stick. So yeah, I always recommend if you're going to do a well palette and you get the most mileage out of it, doing it this way. Essentially, I mixed all these paints from the beginning of the stream onward. They're all still wet after about an hour. I'm to the point now where I might have to add just a little bit more water to them, but I can essentially paint for 4 hours or so, just working with these, no problem. And if I use Rhonda's sponge trick or my saran wrap thing, using the saran wrap thing, I've managed to keep paint good for 3 days in a row. Because I'll paint in the evening sometimes, and if I'm working with a lot of different colors, I'll do the drops of water in the saran wrap. And I've managed to keep the paint going for about 3 days. Oh yeah, you went to the dog show, Kodiak? It's like the military. It's a lot of hurry up and wait. Was she bouncy in the ring? Yeah, there is, I think, Europeans have put up links to a palette like this before. If you look up porcelain well palette, a lot of, if you Google it, you might be able to find something. I don't have a link to the one you can that's European. I only have a link to the one that I recommend in the US. So, not that they won't ship internationally. I kind of assume that Cheap Joe's will ship internationally, but there's just more risk of breakage. All right, so we're gonna use our brown liner to do some shading on this. Shark kangaroo puppy. Oh no. A porcelain one, Richard? Or is it plastic or metal? If you feel like you are sticking substantial, because I'll have a little bit, like a little, you can see little bits, little nicks here and there. But give it a good soak in hot water with some detergent in it, dish detergent or whatever. And then you should be able to like use a green scrubby pad easily. Ceramic and porcelain should be really the same thing as far as the palettes go. I mean, porcelain's just a type of ceramic. They might be labeled differently. I could see the same thing being labeled different, porcelain or ceramic. So I'm going to do just a little bit of lining here. Can get close again. Yeah, then just put it in the sink with really hot water and spray some dish soap or like counter cleanser or any kind of anything that's going to create some soapies into there. Richard, let it sit for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes while the water cools off. And the paint should come out really easily off of that. Green, like minimal effort with green scrubby should give you a clean palette. Sometimes when I forget, I also get like paint sticking more. And I usually let it sit in the sink. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I mean, it's the lazy way to clean things. Put it, put that like soaking your pots. It makes it easier. All right, just getting in these darks here, doing a little bit of dark in there. Other than just outlining the various details, I'm also going to put a shadow up near the top here. Then we'll do more highlighting. Hey, no problem, Corvus. We're here every weekday, normally. I think I will be here every day this week. I think actually that I'm not taking more time off till the summer. So save for like Easter and Memorial Day, I'm gonna be here every weekday. Same time, same channel. All right, let's mix our first highlight for our gold. Oh, baking soda? Yeah, I can see that. Whatever. Oh, Mindy doing the bread pie. Yeah. What did Mindy think of her? Hey, Thormel. Yeah, definitely post some. Oh, you posted some pics in the Discord. Okay, I'll have to go look. I always find it with a puppy, you just have to keep a sense of humor. Yeah, I mean, more modern soap is fine too. Morning, Thormel. Or not morning for some of you. Still morning for me. Oh, good. Yeah, it was the teething on hands. Yep. Good. I'm glad Mindy's happy with her. That's good. Mindy's a good judge. I've known Mindy for lots of years at this point. One of my first dog friends. Did you get any ribbons though? Oh, and jumping me up. Kangaroo. We call that the kangaroo outcross, the jumping when trotting. We always ask the breed founder if she'd accidentally put in a kangaroo outcross. Because you're not alone. Let's just say that. So we're going to make, I'm mixing in some of my rich leather into some candlelight yellow today, not lantern. That is going to give me a yellow that's like this. I mixed a little bit of white into it as well. I can also I'm going to leave this just in case I need to touch up. Yeah, Kiki still had problems controlling her bite, her nibbles. And then she got just to mouthing where she wouldn't bite down. And then, yeah, it was just a progress. You'll find that, and working with a trainer is a good idea. And then they can give you some tactics. But you'll find as she gets older, as long as you're consistent about discouraging it, that she'll be fine, I think. Prince. All right, let's get this thing going on. We're going to highlight down here. You can see, even if you look, you can see that light is falling more down here, right? You see the light is up here, down here, on the top of this, right? And a little bit even right here. I am doing okay. I'm back from vacation, so I had a really relaxing long weekend with my folks. Prince, thanks for asking. Went to Arizona where it was nice and warm, and I could imagine that it was like getting close to summer instead of barely not even spring yet. I had so little, and thank you. Yeah, this Mousling's turn. They're actually a duo. Prince, these are a set of 2. They're the ReaperCon Mouslings from last year. And they're based on a Mousling version of the t-shirt art from ReaperCon. One of the t-shirt arts. So there they are. We painted the ghosty first. And I'm debating whether to do a combined base for them. At first I didn't think I had the oomph for it, but now that I've come back from a vacation, I feel more fresh. Just reminding myself that every once in a while it's nice to take a long weekend. No, I don't have I'm not at Reaper HQ anymore, Prince, so I don't have a direct line into that. Just bringing in some of my brown liner here, guys, to isolate the cross guard from the, I forget what they call that. And darn it, Forged in Fire just like told me what they called that, and I totally forgotten. We watched the blacksmithing reality show for fun in the evening. They showed on Reaper Live. Laura says they showed it on Reaper Live, Prince. Oh, Flying Sophie. Cool. We went to an art show when I was in Arizona. That was really cool. I think I saved a few. There was a bronze guy, a guy who worked in bronze who did animals who was amazing. I would totally want one of the bronzes. Oh yeah, here's my bobcat. Isn't that a beautiful bronze? Like, I would totally have that in my living room. He was so good at capturing their personalities. Yeah, geese are a force of chaos. I hate geese. And you can see like the bear head behind there catching the fish. He just had great animals. There's a coyote. I love the coyote. I would totally have the coyote too. I love animals done in bronze. Like I adore them. And the little cubs too. Just like, and there's a really good rabbit. But you can see how good he is at capturing their feel, right? He's really, really good. I should have grabbed, there's a crow, but you can just barely see. Unfortunately, the crow is off the page. But look at the feather work. In bronze yet. Yeah, it's just really, he was so good. So good. Oh, and he had a chess set. So there's elk versus moose. And it looks like moose has an eagle and a buffalo and a wolf and rabbits. And we have a cougar and a bear and an owl and squirrels. Aren't those awesome? And it's funny because like the reason I loved them so much is that most bronze artists don't work this small, right? But he did the board and he did the pieces. And I mean, you can see the plinth next to it has got a regular size piece on it. So this is the size of a normal chess set. It's just so cool. Like, I really love it. Only $6,800, guys. Because, yeah, all the work. No raccoons on this one. Squirrels and bunnies. Let's see if I have any other of his stuff. No, but I almost bought this one. I liked this one a lot. This was the only watercolor artist there, but it's just a beautiful piece. And it was an original. And it was actually not that expensive, so... Oh, this guy was really cool. So he does wildlife and nature. I think he's from Colorado. But the backdrop here is actually patinaed metal. Do you see it? That's actually metal. So he's painting on a sheet of patinaed metal, and he uses the discolorations and rusts and verdigris, depending on the metal he's working on, to work the painting into them. Isn't it beautiful? Like you can see... There's the metal. You can see even the lights are shining off of it. It gives it a really cool... And then he goes hyper-realistic, cool stuff. The elk is really nice over here. But yeah, all of these backdrops are all like verdigris, all sheet metal. Really cool stuff. I grabbed his pamphlet too. That's the only... the front told us not to take pictures unless the artists were... We asked them, so I only asked a few artists. Yeah, so that's a show that's in the Phoenix area. Actually, it's Scottsdale. And they do it 3 months of the year. They do it January, February, March. And the artists live there, or live in the area through the whole thing. So they're there every day for 3 months, and they work on site. So we got to see a lot of cool work-in-progress stuff, too. Yeah, it was fun. I need to add a little bit of water to my white to keep it good. I get a lot of inspiration from going to art shows and looking at what 2D artists do. A lot of it for just color, texture, form. I always get some ideas for what I'm doing miniatures-wise. So I find it really good to get my art juice going if I'm like feeling kind of tired or like uninspired. I look for inspiration in nature a lot, and I look for inspiration in looking at other artists, like 2D artists stuff. I honestly, it's funny, I don't get inspiration from looking at other painted miniatures. Oh, it was out there. It was just probably less organized, Shadow Raven. Some of the artists are local, so they just go home at the end of the day. They could work in their home studios, probably a lot more productive. But there were people doing, mapping out a new work and stuff on site. It's interesting because you have to... I was talking to one of the artists who was working in, I think watercolor. I think it was a watercolorist, but she said it's kind of interesting because on busy days, you're wearing much more of your business hat and your social hat, talking to people, talking to clients and arranging sales and shipping and stuff like that. And then on the slow days, you're working more with your creative hat, with just occasional people wandering through. So the amount of actual artwork you get done in any given day just depends on what hat you're wearing. Yeah, documentaries. Yep, documentaries. Yeah, that's me too. Moonlight. If I can't go to a show directly, watching documentaries on art, or my mom watches YouTube all the time. She watches really good artists on YouTube. James Gurney's stuff always inspires me. I don't know why I pull inspiration from 2D art and not from looking at other people's miniatures. Like, I appreciate the work of my fellow painters, but it never really gets me as excited as looking at a good 2D piece and thinking how I might adapt it or adapt some element of it. I think it's just something that's happened over time because I used to go to MMSI Chicago and get really inspired, which is a miniature show, though it's mostly historical miniatures. And I think I would get inspired, sometimes I get inspired at Golden Demon, but not so much this. It's funny, I think what it is, so we're getting this guard coming in here. I think what it is it's my competitive urge. I look at a miniatures artist's work and I think about, okay, how can I do that only, you know, as good or better? Or I start analyzing and breaking apart the pieces of what they're doing. And I just view 2D art differently. I don't know. Me and my competitive side are very much, always have been uneasy with each other. It's something I might work on with coaching, because I've never, like, I don't like how I am when I'm competitive, when I let that side of myself out. I decided that a long time ago, and so I stopped letting it out. But it's probably not good to just muffle that part of myself and not give it any play, so. Hi, Kiki. Do you want to come up and say hi? Oh, do you want to come up? Yeah, we have a Keekers, guys. We got a visitation. Oh, Kiki. Hello. Hello, Giant Fuzz. Hi. Oh, hi, Giant Fuzz. Hi, Giant Fuzz. I got a face licking. Yeah, you're a good girl. You're a good girl. Hugs. I get to hug my way. Oh, I got wags when I hugged her. Good girl. Yay, hugs. Yay. Oh, you even like hugs, Papa. You're a unique dog. You're a unique dog. You're totally like mugging from my camera right now, though. They can't even see me. There's just a giant Kiki. There's just a giant Kiki getting pettins. Oh, I've got the paw. The paw over my arm. Oh, here we are. Oh, here we are. Yeah. Who's my good girl? You are. You're my good girl. All right, Bubba. Yeah, work. Just a little bit more work. Okay, sweetie? Yeah. She's a big girl. She's 75 pounds, Corvus. She actually weighs less than any of my other dogs of this breed that I've had. Yeah, but she's a chonk. Good girl. Good girl, Kiki. All right, work. Mama's got to work. Thank you. So, Kodiak, to give you an idea, because I also had a Barracuda shark puppy, she's what? She was born in late June, so we're in late February, so it's been a year and 8 months, right? So, just in the last week or so, I have been able to brush her without her trying to eat the brush. She'll actually stand for me, or she'll lie down, and she's finally figured. Yeah, both smaller Shilohs and one that was, yes, there are definitely are ones that are big. Like, they call Shilohs a giant breed. Yeah, you don't believe me. I was just giving you a benchmark. But yeah, she finally will let me take the coat rake and just brush her all over. She still doesn't like the tail, because the tail tends to snag, and then she'll like come over and go and nose at my hand. But it's enjoyable, right? She finally has realized, oh, Mom's going to sit here and pet me for 15 or 20 minutes, and I just have to enjoy it, right? So it's gone from a game to her enjoying brushings. So, but it took a year and 6 months being here for her to settle in. It will happen. It will just take a long time. So you see what I'm doing here. I've got a light up top. I have to actually strengthen that light. I've got my bright colors on top of the blade, or on top of the hill. And then you go down, and then what down here you get reflected light. So you've got a bit of shadow underneath this, and then you've got reflected light coming up. Yeah, sometimes it is a style thing, Turgeon, where I look at how somebody else has painted a model and gone, yeah, it's not for me, or it's not really my style. But that, actually, I don't think that's quite it, because I've always been really interested in different artists' styles and kind of figuring out what makes them tick. I don't know. But whatever the case, I definitely draw more inspiration now from, and maybe it is that I'm at a high enough level now. Maybe you're right on a level, because I know my own, like, the style that I like, right? So, and I also, like, there's nobody's work I can't pick apart and figure out how to do it, except for people like Darren Hahn, who are working on who have, like, he's photorealist. That's just, even normal artists can't figure out what photorealist artists do. Hello, sir. And thank you for the ready to serve. We are finishing up the last bit of painting on our Mousling, except for the basing. But I'm just working on the little brass hilt here. You just missed my puppy. She crawled into my lap, although she's not really a puppy anymore. I guess she's still under 2 years old, which some people would call a puppy, and she often acts like one, but... There's a little indentation on the hilt here. I'm not sure why. So we're leaving that shadow right up above underneath this. And then we're just bringing it up a little bit down here. We'll bring our highlight up. Mine is finally getting to the point where she doesn't mouth anymore and she'll let me brush her without trying to eat the brush. It's nice. All this work we finally have, I do need to add a little bit of shine to this because it sticks out. There. A little bit too bold on the other side though. Yeah. Maybe it's because I can figure out, like, there's not a miniature painter out there that I can't look at these days and I can, like, figure out their style. Whereas with 2D artists, it's more of a challenge because there are things you can and can't do in 2D, or in 3D that you can do in 2D because you control everything. And, so maybe that's why. I don't know. But I don't really get anything these days. I enjoy looking at other miniature painters' work when it's high level. But it doesn't make me want to paint, and I'm not sure why. So I look for inspiration elsewhere. Yeah, you control the lighting. You know, there's no outside to really interfere with your work. I do come from a 2D background, but I've learned a lot more about painting miniatures than I ever learned in art school. Oh, sorry, getting off camera. So again, with our shadow, we're bringing it up to the bottom. We're getting some reflected light down here. I bet canvas painters get like this though too. When you've mastered your particular style. Maybe you're still evolving, but you're evolving very much in a way, you know, in your own direction. I bet there are like watercolorists who don't get inspired by watching other watercolorists, but do get inspired from other types of artists, right? It is, I mean, that's it's something that people say, I think, without like entirely understanding, but yeah. It's what I tell people about color theory when I teach it, Eat to Surf. I teach people the fundamentals, miniature painting, fundamentals for color theory, just so to keep you out of trouble. Once you understand those rules, you absolutely can break them. But if you try to do it without understanding the underlying principles, it might not be successful. Depends on if you get lucky or not at that point. So there is definitely an element of truth to that pithy saying. I mean, you certainly can break the rules without understanding them, but then it's entirely up to luck whether you manage to carry it off. And when you do carry it off, you won't know why it works. Which may or may not bother you. There we go. Well, that's fine. That's a way of learning. When you just want to jump in and thrash around and see what works and what doesn't, I mean, that's entirely a way of learning. So you're just learning, like, and you'll get lucky or you won't. And if you're good at internalizing your experiences, then you'll essentially create your own set of guidelines based on, like, you know, your experience. And there's certainly, like, that is a perfectly viable way of evolving as an artist. It may be inefficient. Like, if you don't get lucky a lot, you end up wasting a lot of time thrashing around. But if you're enjoying it, there's nothing wrong with that approach. It's only if you get frustrated by lack of progress that starts to work against you at that point. You should maybe question, you know, maybe there's a more efficient way for me to iterate, right? But otherwise, just like happy, random iteration is certainly a valid progression tool, and it keeps you from being bored, so. Only if you're looking to do freehand, Joe. I would say that painting classes hold more for you than drawing classes do, unless you're looking to master like freehand techniques on miniatures. And the reason is that with miniatures, really the learning barriers to get to going from decent to good or really good, are in envisioning light and shadow, and in understanding surfaces and the way that light and color work to create like illusions of metal, like the NMM sword. So a painting class, drawing can give you a light and shadow intro, but you're always going to be doing that like, it's not. I didn't find it as effective for me. How about that? Like, I was drawing from a very young age. It's why I went into art school to begin with, is that I always kind of defaulted to art, and it was something that I knew I could do. But even then, it got in my way. Like, I was much better at drawing than I was at painting. But painting, like, on canvas, like, now that I've done miniatures, I could go back and paint canvas and be much better at it. And if I had done more painting of canvas or paper, if you're watercolor or gouache, if I had done more of that in art classes, I wouldn't have had to struggle so much with understanding light and shading on a figure, highlights and shadows on a figure. So, yeah, but if you're happy with your journey, that's really it. Eat to surf, like, yeah, inspiration is personal, absolutely. Yeah, very good, Corvus. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, well, I mean, I used to get inspiration from other people painted miniatures. That's how I became friends with Jennifer Haley. It's just that now I don't. Now I'm looking for something else. Like, and part of that, I think, is my brain's tendency to get bored. Like, when you understand so many techniques and ways to do something, then you're always looking for the next way to, like, interpret it in a different way. Shadows are how you define masses. Highlights are how you communicate texture, and shadows are how you define the weight and mass of objects. So both of them, yeah, they do two different things though, Surf. Like, your highlights can never tell us, usually won't tell us really the shape of it, like the shape and weight of an object. They'll tell you the type of surface, is it shiny? And they'll tell you, is there texture, and what is it? But when it comes to defining a shape, the shadow does that. The lining does that. It gives you the boundaries of the shape, and if your shadows, once you get to a certain level, you realize your shadows should be the same shape as the thing you're painting. So the shadow around her rounded cheek here is round. And that communicates to you the shape of the object. Do you see what I'm talking about? There's no real undo in painting. Yeah, there's no Control Z. Okay, yeah, people take breaks from miniatures and they come back, and I'm always astonished how long. Like, 40 years is the longest I've ever heard of, Joe. Grats. But hey, enjoy it. Like, if you do Photoshop, you do that. By doing that, I think you get a certain amount of understanding of light and shadow, right? Depending on what you're doing, what you're Photoshopping. But yeah. Yeah. So that's the difference between highlight and shadow. Because the highlights will definitely tell you what type of surface it is, and they help to define texture. But the shadows tell you the shape of the surface and the weight of the surface. How dark you make the shadows. The shadows will also communicate how bright the light is. Because a shadow that, if you do very dark occlusion shadows, like Luca at Miniatures Den, who's also on our channel on Wednesdays, if you do very dark occlusion shadows, you're essentially sending the signal that that it's a very bright light, right? And so I could highlight everything on this model up to white, but it still wouldn't give you that same sense without also darkening the shadows. Literally. Eat to serve. Yeah, well, and if you're working big enough, that's true. I tell people regularly, if you're working above 72 millimeter, around 72 is where it starts. So 72, 75 millimeters about where it starts, where the model starts to cast its own shadows realistically. But anything under that, with these guys, these little 28 guys, they don't do that. So we have to accentuate the shadows to make the shadows look real. So we exaggerate. But if you start dark and work light, you're essentially putting shadows in. You just are painting, you know. Like if I started with a dark red on her shirt and just brought it up, the dark red would essentially become the shadow. So you can certainly paint like that. But if you tend to paint from mids to... So it depends your light-dark range too, right? Because I used to paint dark and then work light. I would start with dark versions of every color and then just work up. But, so like if you are... So on a value scale... That's where you're talking about the grayscale. So if you're only ever using mid-value, then you are lacking somewhat in what you could be doing with your models. But if you start, like, say, at a value 3 or 4 every time with every color, and then you go up from there and you go up to a regular highlight, then this color essentially, even if it was your ground color, it still becomes your shadow. Oh, yeah. Oh, digital retouching. Okay, yeah. Yep, it's true. My TED Talks. I should give one. They don't want me though. I'm not talking about anything earth-shaking. Only paint. Only paint. Although I did think about actually applying to do a TED Talk. I had an idea a while ago to apply to do a TED Talk on how underestimated the crafts are. Like how underestimated, like, because we're considered, like, you know, we're not considered real art most of the time, quote unquote. I'm going to use that in big quote marks because I don't believe it. But I kind of want to, I feel like the stuff that gets underestimated a lot, it has real value, as much value as any other art form. And I think quilters are really showing that now because quilters are starting to get stuff into museums, which is, you know, the validity measure, sadly, of professional artists. But there's still a lot of crafts that don't make it there. But I feel that people doing like work at the top level of almost every craft that's looked down upon are doing just as much art as anyone else in any other traditional medium. I kind of wanted to talk about that, about the creativity and how we downplay the crafts, and the reasons we do, things like that. But I never really, like, I needed to, like, just get a better, I needed to figure out the point, the main message of that, and I felt like I needed to let it sit more. It's not even like folk art. It's like I said, miniature painting is in that thing. It's the thing that's considered that people still consider more of a craft than a quote unquote art. People who make the distinction between craft and art, I feel like there isn't as much of a distinction as people feel, and that the value, there's still a real value in all of this, and it gets downplayed by the larger art community, who have always been, you know, the purists have always been a little snooty and really now, just like with other creator endeavors, it's not so much a thing anymore because any gatekeepers are kind of out of luck. We can do stuff and present it and build a fan base without going through an art gallery or a museum, right? So, but I feel like that attitude is still out there, and I always felt like I wanted to stand up and say, you guys are underestimating this for the value it brings to humanity, and that's what art's key thing is. Like, as an expression of yourself as the artist and emotion and an idea, carrying an idea, I think that crafts are just as valid outlets. What they would consider crafts are just as valid outlets as any. I think, in short, I think everything is an art form. And I get frustrated with the demarcation lines. Whenever I'm at an art show and I mention that I do art, there's always a question mark as to whether if I show the artist or the gallery owner my stuff, there's always a question whether they're going to think it's awesome or look down on it. There's always that question. Oh, I'd get banned. But I feel like there are people in every craft, Moonlight. I would be willing to bet there are people in every craft that do take it to an art level. And so I think looking down on any craft like area is itself a trap, because I feel like all of them can be raised to an art form. And so it's the general classification of, oh, paper, working in paper, that's not art. Like, I just saw somebody at this art show I went to. Yeah, right. Yeah, but there's definitely people who do really highly conceptual, emotional work in miniatures with dioramas and vignettes. And I feel like that it goes that. But yeah. Yeah, exactly. I understand it, but I feel like then that downgrades everybody in it, because everybody likes to blanket judge everything, right? Right. Canvas takes an extra bit. Even I get intimidated by canvases. I mean, although I started playing around when I'm with my mom, we art together. She does a lot of watercolor and colored pencil, and I brought my gouache set with me, and we did a little bit of a study of a cactus in her backyard. Just because I want to limber up that part of my art zone. I don't want to lose it. And I've neglected it for my 2D art for a long time. I could have been very, very far along if I had, but I focused on miniatures, right? But I don't consider that a downgrade. I consider miniatures to be art, or have the capacity to be art. But it's just like everything. Like, there are plenty of people playing in watercolors that you would argue they're using it as a craft. They're doing, like, they're following steps, and they're, learning technique, and they're doing all the stuff, right? Are you human? Okay, yeah, Korniko, good. I'll look that up. Yeah. Right. You and Matt DiPietro should talk, Moonlight. He thinks we should have, like, galleries and stuff. And I kind of feel like he's right. Like, you'd have to choose the right city for it. Maybe Las Vegas. But especially, because sometimes the thing that gets in the way of miniatures being fine art is it's a collaboration, right? It's a collaboration they don't entirely understand. Like, they like to point, like, I feel like people tend to say, oh, well, you're just doing a coloring book, it's just in 3D. But even if the artist, like, if the sculptor, even though you didn't do the artwork, the sculpt, you can still take that sculpt and interpret it at a high enough level that it turns into something new, right? So, yeah, but Matt loves to talk about this. Yeah, he's cool. Matt's cool. I pointed out the amount of work that it would take to... I almost forgot the little pommel, guys. I have to at least put some color on that. We have to end the stream soon because it's almost 1:15, but I've missed a bunch of times, so I don't mind going a little late. Yeah, the problem is somebody needs to, like, make that their... Or several somebodies need to make that their mission, right? They need to be the advocates for our hobby as an art form. And it would take work, right? And that's the thing, right? Who's going to do the work? And much as people were kind of grumpy about Crystal Brush sometimes, it actually made other artists kind of sit up and look at our hobby, like, more seriously, because of the big cash prizes, which also exist in fine art stuff. In fact, they're much rarer in the fine arts, from what I was led to believe. And so that actually gave us legitimacy in some people's eyes, but it's a hard line. It's very interesting to think about. But if I ever did a TED Talk, that's what I would do. That's what I would focus on. Yeah. Oh, Virgo's, well, okay, so they're going to do it then. Good, Valkyrie. And I said, yeah, Las Vegas, yep. Super. Yeah, let me know if that, when is it supposed to open, Valkyrie, do you know? Yeah, that's true, eat to serve. Yeah, it's just mental blocks. People are used to thinking certain ways about certain things. I just think that the crafts deserve more recognition instead of always being kind of looked down upon by the greater art community. And I feel like people in general tend to like just look down on what we do, and it's sad because there's so much this hobby can help with stress and mental health. And even like self-image and confidence. Like there's so much this hobby can do, and our community is so friendly for the most part. There's trolls, but there's trolls everywhere. And so I hate to see people just deciding to look down on what we do as just toys and doesn't matter to anybody and has no redeemable qualities. You know, I've met plenty of people who are that way. Do a little bit of, bring the white down the side here. Oh, yeah? Oh, good. Excellent. Very good, Moonlight. That's super cool. Yeah, well, good. That'll do something then in Vegas. There's a fair number of us, I think, Richard. Although these days I'm more just, I don't actually put miniature painter, I actually put artist. Ever since when I first went freelance, even though I failed out, I was so proud that year to put artist as my profession on my tax return. So I never distinguished. Even back then, I did not distinguish between what I was doing. I did not say miniature painter. I said artist. Right. Yeah, Chris Bratz is really good. Yep, yep. And that's what we live for, right, Moonlight? It's like, that's the thing is, whenever I paint something to a top level, I always try to put a picture of it up on Insta or whatever, and I always tag the artist or the company that made it so they can see it, because it's like that's the enjoyable factor is what you've produced together. Right, exactly. Somebody, yeah, and those are the people around you, right? I have plenty of those people who thought what I was doing was childish, and that's why this TED Talk, idea popped into my head, is for those. Not that those people are probably like cool enough to watch TED Talks, but maybe they are. You never know. Might change somebody's mind. But yeah, it's why I've never been comfortable with just talking about miniatures and saying toys or toy soldiers like some people do. I've never been comfortable with that description because I never considered it dismissive. I never to me that sounds dismissive, and I would never do that to my art. All right, there we go. Yeah, sounds like exhausting. There we are! We have an S word, or sword. And now we have 2 complete mouselings. Ah, we are complete. Except for basing. Except for basing! I don't care what others, like, I don't let what others think pull me down, but I do think it's worth changing minds if I can create an example for people who don't have an opinion yet, right? You're never going to change somebody's mind that's made up. But for the person that hasn't thought about it, that then encounters this art, you know, like, I like to be able to, like, present that side of things. So, and I do care about what people think. Like, I do care, not like on that level, like if somebody doesn't like what I do, I never take that personally. I don't care about that. But in the greater, like, view of the hobby, I do care about how people view the hobby. And if I can get them to view it, or encourage them to view it, or open that door to them viewing it as not just dismissing it as toys or not worthwhile, then I'll do that. Like, I think that for me, that's a worthwhile battle. I don't know, Pendrake. I talked about that at the beginning of the stream, but I have not decided yet. I originally did not want to do a combo base for them because I've done so many bases lately and I'm kind of out of energy for it, but it'll depend. But there we are. So yeah, and we only went till 20 after. And since I missed 2 days last week, then this helps make up time. So tomorrow we're back to the model that we have hardly progressed on instead of the models that we're all mostly done with. Oh, hey, and I think we're starting new model on the next day. So tomorrow, we are back to Sophie. Sophie and Sophie's wings. I think that we've got her skin tones more or less nailed down. But they don't view it that way, Eat to Surf. See, that's the thing, right? They view the models as... They put out the models with the idea of them being gaming pieces. Except for, you know, obviously they can be artwork, right? But Reaper's business model is, it would be better to, like, to present both sides. Like, you can use this just as a game piece, but if taken to the right level, it can also be art. So, yeah, that's where it's hard, right? Because they are game pieces, but they're also miniature art. And I think little Sophie here is a good example of miniature art. But yeah, so and there are miniatures companies that, especially that do things like busts and larger pieces that are not gaming models, that definitely do, you know, push the idea that it's art, for sure. But it's harder with 28s. But yeah, so Sophie will be tomorrow. We'll probably finish up highlighting her skin. Probably we'll start in on the brown leather of her wings, since I always do wings first to get them out of the way. This is a model, by the way, that I was thinking of using the Twilight Indigo on. So we will be doing Sophie tomorrow. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, all you new people. Thank you, all the streamers who rated us and brought people in. I'm going to do a quick stretch. Whoa. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's true enough. When the sculptor sculpts it, it is art. Right? That initial sculpt is absolutely art. You have a good point, Eat to Surf. But I think it just becomes more difficult then for some miniatures companies to put forward. Yes. Ta-ta for now, Corvus. We'll be back tomorrow. But yeah, so we'll be on Sophie tomorrow. I hope you all have a lovely day. I'm going to go put my my green stuff in the freezer so that it stays good for longer. And yes, thank you everybody for coming. I hope you had fun. Yes, remember, Rhonda's coming. Rhonda's in, 40 minutes? So y'all have a good time, and I will see you again tomorrow morning. Have a good one, everybody.